Go to the CityLink bus station in downtown Fort Wayne, and not only can you take a bus anywhere around the city, but you can also go Greyhound and connect to almost anywhere in the country.
Take care. Have a good day.
We're the designated agent for Greyhound, Barron Bus, and Miller Trailways, which all come through this station 12 times a day.
Jump on board a plane here at the Fort Wayne International Airport, and the sky's the limit.
If you just look at the numbers who are leaving, we have about 300,000 a year that use FWA for commercial carrier transportation. With one stop, you can get to 350 different cities, and over 100 of them are international.
But when it comes to passenger trains, you'll need to travel outside of Fort Wayne, and for that matter, Allen County, to get on the right tracks. And many people would like to change that.
It's really nice. It's a nice way to travel. We just need it here in Fort Wayne.
I'm Tara Brantley, and for the next half hour, you're invited to jump aboard for an in-depth look at a plan to bring high-speed passenger train service to Fort Wayne. You'll hear from city council members and Indiana's congressional leaders about a proposal that links 3 states and 10 cities. See how the plan incorporates the use of Fort Wayne's historic Baker Street train station and could supplement the city's local bus system and Greyhound service. We'll also visit Waterloo, Indiana, and talk with train riders who board Northeast Indiana's only intercity passenger train, Amtrak. Hear about a plan designed to enhance that station and improve customer service. Plus, riders give their thoughts on high-speed rail and how they think it could impact passenger train service in Fort Wayne and the surrounding area. We'll talk about all this and more as Wayne TV rides the rails to examine passenger train service in Northeast Indiana and a proposal to get Fort Wayne on track.
Community, commitment, coverage you can count on. This is Focus 15 on Wayne TV. Here's your host, Tara Brantley.
Passenger train service has a long history in Indiana. For decades, it was the primary way to travel, and it serviced both cities large and small. These days, getting around by rail is rather limited in the Hoosier State. The train I am riding on right now is located in central Indiana. It's an old-fashioned tourist type of passenger train called the Hoosierland. It primarily rolls out on the weekend for sightseers, school groups, or those who want to enjoy a scenic train ride between Fishers and Noblesville. It's a short 30-minute trip that takes you to Indiana's Transportation Museum and then back to Fishers. In Northwest Indiana, there is an actual commuter train. It's called the South Shore Line and travels from South Bend to Chicago. It makes almost 20 stops along a 93-mile corridor with frequent trips every day of the week. But the primary passenger train service in the Hoosier State is Amtrak. Amtrak operates a nationwide rail network that serves more than 500 destinations in 46 states, the District of Columbia, and Canada. It is the nation's only intercity passenger rail provider, and it has a few high-speed trains that travel up to 150 miles per hour. But Amtrak is not considered a high-speed rail system because many of its trains travel at about half that speed. Amtrak serves 11 Hoosier cities. Fort Wayne is not one of them. In Northeast Indiana, the only way to ride Amtrak is to travel to DeKalb County and board in Waterloo, which is about 30 miles away from the Summit City, and the small stop in Waterloo stands ready to make some major changes.
This is our first big trip.
Sue McClure and her family left Fort Wayne and drove about 30 miles to take the Amtrak in Waterloo.
We're going to go from here to Chicago, Chicago to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Glacier State Park, and then we're going to go on to Seattle. So, you know, we're real excited about being on the train.
Alrighty, folks.
And whether you're departing
East.
or picking someone up,
We come out here once a year to pick up my mother-in-law, her mom, and
it's a long drive to come out here.
Anybody traveling together?
Anyone who rides Amtrak in Northeast Indiana must go to Waterloo to take the train. But this wasn't always the case. Up until 1990, Amtrak did go through Fort Wayne. Amtrak's Mark Maglieri says Fort Wayne lost service because the tracks through the city changed hands and were downgraded to speeds that were unacceptably slow for passenger trains.
That it? Anybody else?
So since that departure more than 20 years ago, Amtrak has traveled through Waterloo with a top speed of 79 miles per hour. And this little bus hut is the train station.
And there's nothing here. I mean, if it's raining, you get wet inside this little shelter.
But this little shelter could soon undergo a big transformation.
We would like to have a better passenger experience for our Amtrak riders.
Waterloo Town Manager Tenna Winker.
We did receive a Tiger grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Tiger stands for Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery. The grant is for $1.8 million.
We had to make some revisions to it after the sequester last year.
Winker says Waterloo is now waiting for the go-ahead from the U.S. Department of Transportation to begin renovations.
We have a historic depot that we've restored. We'd like to move that building down here.
That Restore Depot that already has a ticket window, restrooms, and a waiting area is currently about 300 yards down the street. Under the renovation plan, it would be picked up and moved to the current Amtrak parking area.
It'll be temperature controlled. Well, hopefully it'll have Wi-Fi and people will be able to wait comfortably for the train both day and night.
The existing parking area would be paved and expanded to accommodate 85 vehicles.
An average of 19 or 20,000 people a year use this train station in Waterloo, and we're the third busiest in the state.
Tied for third busiest, yes, but the actual numbers are higher. From 2007 to 2013, Amtrak ridership in Waterloo increased from a little more than 16,000 to almost 24,000.
I think that demand tells us that people want access on trains and they want to be able to ride across the country on passenger rail. We're the best location for Fort Wayne, so I think if we improve our station, we can actually improve ridership here too.
Improvements or not, some riders still want Amtrak on track in the Summit City.
They just need to open the one in Fort Wayne, get that one up to scale so it can come there.
But Maglieri says Amtrak has no current plans to make that happen. Waterloo could find out if the Tiger grant goes through in a matter of weeks. Regardless of what happens here, some riders still think Fort Wayne needs to get on track.
Yeah, I'd love to see service come to Fort Wayne. We'd ride the train a lot more often.
But since Amtrak is not planning to reroute to the Summit City, the Northeast Indiana Passenger Rail Association is pushing to bring high-speed rail to Fort Wayne. The question is that feasible? We'll look at a proposal and hear arguments for and against the idea when Focus 15 continues.
Focus 15 continues. Now let's get back to your host, Tara Brantley.
As the second largest city in Indiana, why doesn't Fort Wayne have passenger train service? A study is underway to determine if high-speed rail would work. Right now, across the United States, there are no full-fledged high-speed rail systems in place, but some are in the beginning stages, like the one in Chicago. Some high-speed rail advocates here in the Midwest would like to hook up to that one in Chicago by extending it to Columbus, Ohio. And Fort Wayne would be right in the middle, with trains going through downtown at the Baker Street train station. In 1914, steam trains began rolling through Fort Wayne's Baker Street train station. In the early 1970s, Amtrak came on track offering enhanced passenger rail, and Fort Wayne resident Fred Lanahan often jumped aboard.
It's really nice. It's a nice way to travel.
Lanahan, who is also president of the Northeast Indiana Passenger Rail Association, NIPRA, rode from Fort Wayne until Amtrak stopped service in 1990 and rerouted to Waterloo.
It would be much nicer if it were here in town.
Now, only freight trains roll through the Summit City, but NIPRA wants passenger trains to return in the form of high-speed rail.
We're the largest city in Indiana without train service, and we need it.
NIPRA thinks the best way to make that happen is to link up with a project in Chicago that is currently developing tracks for trains that will travel 110 miles an hour, with the ultimate goal of going faster. A map from the U.S. High-Speed Rail Association shows a potential high-speed rail system from Indianapolis through Chicago. As you see, no route currently exists for Fort Wayne, which is why NIPRA, working with transportation officials in Indiana and Ohio, is proposing an additional route. Fort Wayne 5th District City Councilman Jeff Paddock showed me the plan.
All these dots you see here, all these communities are raising funds for what's called a Tier 1 environmental impact study. We are raising about $1 million on each side of the aisle here in Ohio and over here in Indiana. And once that money is put together, we hope to be able to do a request for proposal, which would give us the Tier 1 environmental impact study.
Paddock says this study comes in phases. The first was paid earlier this year using money from CEDIT, the County Economic Development Income Tax. Fort Wayne City Council appropriated $200,000 and Allen County Commissioners $50,000, but it didn't come without controversy.
They wanted to use legacy funds to do that. And I and some others didn't think that was the right use of legacy money, and it turned out that was the case. So the city shifted over to using income tax money to do this study, so we can look at, at least beginning to look at the feasibility of high-speed rail or higher speed trains coming through Fort Wayne. 1st
District City Councilman Tom Smith says the $250,000 is just the beginning.
They will be coming back to us for more money for these studies. This is just a phase 1 of the study.
In addition to funding this study, there is also the cost of paying for the actual system if the Federal Rail Administration approves.
The price, Tara, it's about $3.7 million per mile to do upgrades for rail and overpasses and station work and signalization and so on.
Paddock says entering Fort Wayne, the possible route would come through the northwest section of town and eventually wind down to the Baker Street train station. It would go east through New Haven and to Lima, Ohio, and further on to Columbus. Leaving Fort Wayne, it would align with US 30 to Valparaiso and then turn slightly north into Lake County and up to Chicago.
We're talking about 300 miles between Chicago and Columbus, Ohio.
That 300 miles involves 10 cities.
If you see the stops along the way, we're looking at speeds of up to 110 miles per hour with these upgrades. Quick travel. Okay. Think about this. Get on a train right here at Baker Street Station and you can get to Chicago, even with these stops along the way, in about 2 hours.
Estimated cost of the Chicago, Fort Wayne, Columbus project, almost $1.3 billion.
We believe that the federal government might pay up to 80%, which means we'd have to come up with a 20% match through the state of Indiana and perhaps local governments.
I'd like to see some of our local rail people start thinking about, in tandem with high-speed rail, something between Fort Wayne and Indianapolis, the two largest cities. We're the Summit City, they're the capital city. Let's connect us up.
The possibility of train service returning to Fort Wayne, high speed or otherwise, was the driving force behind CityLink's recent move right next door to the Baker Street train station.
We were looking forward to the opportunity to coordinate with rail once it becomes available back in Fort Wayne.
And let's not forget air travel. A link established between rail and bus could also impact access to the airport.
I do think multiple modes of transportations and options for anybody who wants to travel or to use is an excellent idea.
I think high-speed rail is a long shot. I really do. And it's going to take a long time.
And that long time could be anywhere from 10 to 20 years from now. Still, we wanted to get an idea of some of the complexities involved. You'll hear them after the break.
Now here's more Focus 15 with your host, Tara Brantley.
So aside from improving the Amtrak depot, we have heard two different ideas. One is the Chicago, Fort Wayne, Columbus, Ohio high-speed rail plan. The other is for a possible commuter between Fort Wayne and Indianapolis. Either way you go, it's complicated. When it comes to paying for the study of developing a Chicago, Fort Wayne, Columbus high-speed rail system, one of the variables that's most up in the air is how to keep funding research.
There's probably a phase 2 and a phase 3, and so we just don't know what that ongoing expense is going to be, except we know it's coming.
City and county leaders have already allocated $250,000 for phase 1 of this Tier 1 high-speed rail study. Now Fort Wayne is waiting for the other cities on this proposed route to contribute so they can hire a consulting firm. The research will then be collectively sent to the Federal Railroad Administration.
Give us, I think, more detail about the costs of this and where we might get the funding.
It's not going to happen overnight.
While the future costs of this proposal and possibly others remains unclear, the materials needed to actually build a rail system are clear, and one of the key components is made right in Fort Wayne's backyard.
We supply rail to passenger railroads as well as the freight rail industry in North America.
Rails are manufactured at Steel Dynamics in Columbia City.
We melt about 120 tons of scrap metal at a time, turn that into liquid steel that we can then roll into a rail that's up to 320 feet long.
Strong rails are fundamental in any train system, and when that system is high speed, there's an added concern.
To higher and higher speed passenger rails, it is important to make sure we're making a very straight, very flat product, so that those high speeds, the ride quality is very good.
As the local and state governments work with the Federal Railroad Administration to work out the intricacies of a train plan that includes Fort Wayne, companies like Steel Dynamics are waiting in the wings to see what happens.
We're the most qualified domestic manufacturer of rail in North America, so we certainly feel like we have an advantage for supplying rail for the passenger applications, and we'd love to be a participant in the project here in Indiana.
So whether it's high-speed, commuter, or enhancing Amtrak, it all hinges on the federal government. I'll talk with U.S. Senator Joe Donnelly when Focus 15 continues.
I love the train. I think it's a great idea. People can travel quicker and just go for the day or the weekend.
I'd love to see train service.
I think that the train system, the way that it is not very efficient. I think that it could be better. I think that if more money was put into it, that it would be a better service for the people, and you'd have a lot more options as far as being able to get to different places. And I think that could just only bode well for economy.
Before jumping aboard this train, I had the chance to talk with U.S. Senator Joe Donnelly about passenger train service in Northeast Indiana. We focused on high speed, a train between Fort Wayne and Indianapolis, and of course, Amtrak.
Happy to.
First, let's discuss the situation with the Amtrak station in Waterloo. Where do we stand right now with funding approval for the depot?
Well, the funds have been approved, and it's a question of structuring the work that will be done. They're working together with the Department of Transportation so that it can all be done in a way that makes sense for the train station for Waterloo. And so we're trying to coordinate the discussions between the Department of Transportation and the city.
Is there any timetable on this?
There is not a finished timetable at this point, but obviously the sooner the better, and we're very, very hopeful it'll conclude in fairly reasonable order.
Now, whether funding for the Amtrak depot is actually coming through or not in terms of a timely manner, a number of people are trying to bring high-speed rail through Fort Wayne. What are your thoughts on that? Should Amtrak and high-speed coexist in Northeast Indiana, or is one a better option than the other?
You know, I think they both have their own place, their own footprint, and Amtrak has been a presence for a long time, and I think will continue to do so. High-speed rail, of course, is dependent on having enough people to make it financially viable, and so that's the question.
Now, let's say, as for high-speed rail, where do we stand on this?
Well, there are some areas out in California that have systems that are, obviously a lot faster than the common rail systems. There are systems on the Northeast Corridor, what's called the Acela train, which goes at speeds of like 90, 95 miles an hour, and that's not high speed, but it is faster than the normal Amtrak process. And so it's kind of a hybrid mix, and what we're trying to see is where high-speed rail would be effective and be financially viable.
Now, there is some ambiguity regarding what is high-speed rail in terms of speed. How fast does a train have to travel to be considered high-speed rail?
Well, you know, I don't know the exact number, but certainly, you know, there are some trains over in other parts of the world, in Europe and in China and other places, that are running at over 200 miles an hour. And so any systems that can make, for instance, a Fort Wayne to Chicago run or Fort Wayne to Columbus run within a very, very reasonable time window would certainly be considered high speed in my book.
Now, as far as this region is concerned, has the government gotten enough cities along the proposed Chicago, Fort Wayne, Columbus corridor to submit their independent studies for high-speed rail?
Well, there's a lot of cities that want to be part of this. I know that the mayor of Fort Wayne, Tom Henry, has talked to other municipal officials around the multi-state area, and so it is moving along.
I also talked with a local city councilman about another possibility. He is suggesting developing a commuter train between Fort Wayne and Indianapolis. Would that be a more viable alternative?
Well, you know, that's pretty much up to the people of Fort Wayne, the people of Indianapolis, the people of Columbus and Chicago. And so I think that, you know, part of my job is to try to listen to everybody back home and have the people there make those kind of decisions.
Last question. Do you think any type of passenger rail will eventually come through Fort Wayne in the near future?
Oh, I think absolutely. Fort Wayne is a growing area. We've seen more and more jobs come there all the time. It's becoming an increasingly important city throughout our region, and so part of that is going to be an increased rail presence, I think.
So we'll see what the future holds. Senator Donnelly, thank you for talking with me.
Thank you very much.
You've heard from a number of people and gotten a look at ideas and proposals. It's important to remember right now that nothing is certain, but it is obvious that there is a push to improve passenger service here in Indiana, whether by enhancing what already exists or creating an entirely new system. We are closely watching developments, and we'll let you know what happens. I'm Tara Brantley. It has been my pleasure to be your host for Focus 15 on Track. Thanks for jumping aboard.